Okay, so now that we have some enemies in our game, we want to get rid of them by using the kind of classic platformer way of bouncing on their heads. So how are we going to make that happen? Well, the most simple way is basically if we get our player, so we'll go look at our player here. Basically, if we just create an extra little box below his feet that will check and see if there's an enemy in that box. So basically we know that if our player is on top of another enemy, we can we can check if the enemy is within this box, and if it is, then we know we should kill that other enemy. So let's just create that first. So on our player here, we're going to right click and we're going to create empty, and we'll call this the stomp box. Very simple name. And we're going to add a new component, and we're going to go box collider 2D. Now obviously we're going to need this to be a trigger zone because we don't want it to be a solid block, or else our player will end up just kind of floating in the air above this solid invisible block. So we'll make it a trigger. We don't want it to be the full size of the player like this. We want it to be just wide enough below his feet, and we want it to be just a little bit high. It's hard to see there actually, so I'll just move this down here like this. So that zone will be quite big, so we want it to be kind of just below the player's feet, kind of roughly about that size. So let's just move it up a little bit there like that. Okay, so now we've got our little stomp box here, and now basically what we'll do is if we I didn't mean to move that. Let's move our player over here. Basically what we want to happen is when our player jumps down and enters into the enemy here, it should check and see if there's an enemy below us, and if it is an enemy, then we will destroy it. Okay, so let's what we're going to need to do is create a script, obviously, to control when that stuff happens. So rather than adding it to the player controller script or anything, we want to actually create a specific script to go into this the stomp box game object. So let's create a new script down here, new C# script that we will call stomp enemy. Okay, we'll open this up then. Okay, I'll get rid of that. So obviously we want to check what the enemy is. And how are we going to be able to check what the enemy is? So obviously we've set up this trigger zone. So again, we'll use our void on trigger enter 2D, and we'll have a collider 2D other, much like we've done before. The very simplest way to do it. And what we want to do is check what the other is. So this time we're going to say if other.tag is equal to enemy. And I know we haven't made the enemy tag, but we're going to do that now. Actually, we'll just go ahead and do that. So we have our other.tag is equal to enemy. So if we're going to do that check, we're going to need to know that our enemies have that tag. So we'll just let this compile for a second, and then on a spider, go to a tag, and we'll drop down to add a new tag, which we will call enemy, just like that. And then go back to our spider and give him that tag, and we'll do the same thing on our green wiggle. We'll give him the enemy tag as well. So basically what we do then, we'll jump back to our script, and here we want to say, okay, if the other.tag is equal to enemy, then basically just destroy other.game object. Very simple and very straightforward. So let's go back in here and see how this looks now. So we wait for that to compile, and then we'll go to our stomp box game object, add that script we just made, so our stomp enemy script. And now if we hit play here, I started a bit too close to that enemy, but we can see there that when I actually got on top of him, bam, we're able to kill him and he's gone out of the game. But also at the moment it kind of looks a little bit simple. Let me just, didn't mean to move the box. We want to move the player back over to here. So it's not getting in the way of our player walking or anything like that, which is ideally what we wanted to happen. Okay, we fell down, but that's okay. So at the moment, we're not getting a lot of reaction though. It kind of looks like the enemy just disappears from beneath our feet, which is not quite what we want to happen really. So let's just go over here as an example. We jump on top and our enemy gets disappeared from the game. So that's not really very good. We don't want that to happen. Let's make some changes to make it look a bit more obvious. So for example, we could do, like when our player explodes, we could make the enemy explode. So let's create a game object to reference that. So we'll say public game object. Again, we'll just use for now our Deathsplosion particle effect, but you might want to just create a new specific one for these enemies. But for now, just to save time, we'll just use the same one. So what we'll do, much like we did before, we want to instantiate that Deathsplosion. So we will instantiate, and then in the brackets, we want to use the Deathsplosion, obviously. We need to decide where the position will be, and obviously the position should just be where our enemy is. So we will just say the other dot transform dot position. Ooh, I spelled that wrong. Dot position, and we'll do the same for the rotation. So other dot transform dot rotation, and we'll save this and pop back in again. And now on our stamp box, we'll have a slot for our Death Explosion. So let's go to our prefabs folder. Oh, we closed our stamp box there when we did that. And we got our Deathsplosion, drag that into place there. And now if we hit play, oh, I fell down. Okay, we'll walk over to here, jump on top of this guy. Oh, and now we get a little bit more activity when it explodes. But it's still not looking quite interesting. It still looks like, yes, it's nice that they explode, but it still looks like we're just falling straight down. So what we could do is add a little bit of a bounce when we land on top of the enemy. So to do that, we're going to use our player's rigid body values, so we can give it an extra bit of velocity to push it up into the air.